Aku anak Malaysia, aku bangga. Tanahku banyak darah. Aku anak Malaysia, segalanya untuk anak-anak.
World leaders condemn Israeli strike on Qatar. And also Nepalese PM resigns following violent protests. Good afternoon and salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for tuning in. You're watching World Today with me, Brenda Paul. The Qatari government has condemned Israel's attacks on Hamas leaders in Doha and described it as a cowardly Israeli attack. The attack that targeted residential buildings housing several members of the Hamas political bureau in Doha. It was described as a blatant violation of international laws and norms and a serious threat to the security and safety of Qataris and residents. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry stated that the security forces, civil defense and relevant authorities immediately began addressing the incident, taking necessary measures to contain its repercussions and ensure the safety of residents and surrounding areas. Qatar strongly condemns the assault. It affirms that it will not tolerate such reckless Israeli behavior, the ongoing disruption of regional security, or any act targeting its security and sovereignty. Qatar, which has acted as a mediator alongside Egypt in talks on a ceasefire in the almost 2-year-old war in Gaza, called the action a flagrant violation of international law. Israel attempted to kill the political leaders of Hamas with an airstrike on Qatar, escalating its military action in the Middle East with what the U.S. described as a unilateral attack that does not advance American and Israeli interests. Donald Trump said that he was never surprised by anything, especially when it comes to the Middle East. Donald Trump also said he considered hitting Hamas was a worthy goal, but he felt badly that the attack took place in the Gulf Arab state, which is a major non-NATO ally of Washington and where the Palestinian Islamist group has long had its political base.
Well, I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled about it. I don't have to do that. I'm not thrilled about the whole situation. It's not a good situation. But I will say this, we want the hostages back, but we are not thrilled about the way that went down today.
Qatar is a security partner of the United States and host to Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military facility in the Middle East. It has acted as a mediator alongside Egypt in talks between Israel and Hamas for a ceasefire in Gaza, which appears to be increasingly elusive. On another note, Malaysia condemns in the strongest possible terms the Israeli airstrikes in Doha. Prime Minister Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim said this wanton act of aggression is a blatant violation of Qatar's sovereignty and a grave breach of international law. In a Facebook post, Dr. Sri Anwar stated that it recklessly endangers civilian lives, strikes at the very heart of a sovereign capital, and threatens to inflame an already fragile region. Malaysia stressed that by targeting Qatar, a nation central to mediation and dialogue in the Middle East, Israel has shown utter contempt for peace and diplomacy. He added Malaysia stands in full solidarity with Qatar and calls on the international community to hold Israel accountable for this outrageous aggression. On a different note, the Malaysian embassy in Doha has confirmed that no Malaysians were affected in the Israeli attack in Qatar. In a statement, the embassy advised Malaysians in Qatar to remain vigilant and avoid the affected area. Malaysians are also advised to keep abreast of current developments through official information released by the Qatari authorities. The statement further noted that the Qatari government has assured that the situation is now fully under control and that the country's airspace will not be closed. Nepal's Prime Minister Khadga Prasad Sharma Oli resigned after violent protests spread in the country. Oli stepped down as anti-government protesters targeted public buildings and homes of politicians following the deaths of 19 people in clashes with police. The Prime Minister's private residence was one of the places targeted in various incidents of arson and vandalism. The ruling Nepali Congress Party's office also was set on fire. The Nepalese army used helicopters to evacuate ministers from their residences. Also, flights of Kathmandu's Tribhuvan International Airport were stopped temporarily for security reasons. Airline crews were unable to reach the airport and smoke was seen billowing in the area. However, the airport has not been closed. Curfew has been imposed in many areas of Kathmandu and other districts in Nepal to control the protests. This marked Oli's fourth term as Prime Minister, having first assumed the role from October 2015 to July 2016. Malaysians residing in or travelling to Nepal have been advised to remain vigilant following the widespread protests. The Foreign Ministry urged Malaysians to follow safety guidance issued by local authorities and stay informed through official channels. The ministry confirmed that to date, there have been no reports of Malaysians affected by or involved in the protests. Violence escalated in Kathmandu following widespread protests over the government's social media ban, leaving at least 19 people killed. The ministry, through the Embassy of Malaysia in Kathmandu, remains in close contact with the local authorities in Nepal and is actively monitoring the situation. Those who have not registered their presence in the country are strongly encouraged to do so through e-consular to ensure timely support and communication. In other news, Thailand's Supreme Court ruled that former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra should return to prison for 1 year to complete his sentence term. Thaksin was unlawfully allowed to stay in hospital detention. The court's criminal division for holders of political positions concluded that Thaksin's 6-month hospital stay cannot be counted as time served for his 1-year sentence. After the ruling, Thaksin posted on social media that he accepted the court's decision. Thaksin served as Thailand's Prime Minister from 2001 to 2006. Thaksin returned to Thailand in August 2023 after over 15 years of self-imposed exile. Upon arrival, he was taken into custody to serve an 8-year sentence on 3 convictions involving corruption and abuse of power, which was later reduced to 1 year by royal pardon. After serving less than 24 hours in jail, he was transferred from a Bangkok prison to the Police General Hospital, citing critical health concerns. A $2 billion Chinese-built airport in Cambodia opened its runways for first planes on Tuesday, bringing hopes for a tourism revival, but beset by accusations of land evictions. Officials hope the facilities, which replaces Phnom Penh's old airport as the capital's main aviation transport hub, will boost Cambodia's struggling tourism industry. Built by a major state-owned Chinese construction firm, the Techo International Airport is a 2,600-hectare behemoth, jointly funded by the Cambodian government and the privately owned Overseas Cambodian Investment Corporation, OCIC. Located 20 kilometers south of the capital, Techo Airport will be able to handle up to 13 million passengers a year and aims to reach 50 million by 2050. The old Phnom Penh International Airport, operating since 1959, was closed for good on the eve of the new airport's debut. Techo is the second major airport in Cambodia to open in the space of 2 years following the inauguration of a $1.1 billion Chinese-funded terminal near the Angkor Wat Temple complex in November 2023. Next up, U.S. welcomes Singapore Defense Minister to Pentagon. Stay with us. United States Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on Tuesday welcomed Singapore's Defense Minister Chan Chun Sing to the Pentagon, calling the U.S.-Singapore relationship crucial to regional stability and maintaining deterrence in the Indo-Pacific. During the bilateral meeting, Hegseth welcomed Singapore's Defense Minister to the newly minted Department of War. Last Friday, US President Donald Trump signed an executive order to rename the Department of Defense as the Department of War, reverting to a title it held until after World War II, when officials sought to emphasize the Pentagon's role in preventing conflict. The move would instruct Hexeth to recommend legislative and executive actions required to make the renaming permanent. Department name changes are rare and have required congressional approval. Still, Trump questioned whether he really needed a nod from Congress, even though his fellow Republicans hold slim majorities in both the Senate and House of Representatives. The two defense ministers on Tuesday also discussed Singapore's purchase of additional F-35 stealth fighters that would eventually replace its older F-16s. The U.S. government will address what it sees as an epidemic of chronic illness among American children. The Make America Healthy Again Commission suggests changes like offering full-fat milk in cafeterias and limiting marketing of food and drugs.
We are thrilled for this day because we share a common desire to build a healthier future for our children and our society. Nothing is more important than the health of our children, and we therefore recognize that we cannot accept the disastrous trends toward increasing childhood obesity, diabetes, neurodevelopmental disorders, and other indicators of poor childhood health.
The Environmental Protection Agency will work to build public confidence in its pesticide review process and reform its agrochemical approval process to ensure their timely availability to farmers. Polish and Allied aircraft were activated to ensure the safety of Poland's airspace after Ukraine's Air Force warned that Russian drones entered NATO member Poland's airspace. Earlier, the Ukrainian Air Force stated that drones were heading west and threatening the city of Zamość in Poland. It was not immediately clear how many drones were in Poland's airspace. Ukrainian media reported at least one drone was heading towards the western Polish city of Rzeszów. The Polish Armed Forces has activated all necessary procedures to ensure the security of Polish airspace and said the Polish military is fully prepared for immediate response. Poland earlier announced it was closing its eastern border with Russian ally Belarus as it prepares for military exercises beginning Friday. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Tuesday welcomed NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte at 10 Downing Street in London. Starmer and Rutte held a short meeting where they pledged long-term support for Ukraine, with Rutte praising UK leadership on Europe's defence build-up and recent security guarantees.
So congratulations. And then, of course, we've got discussions about Ukraine and our ongoing support, defence and security across Europe, the coalition of the willing, security guarantees, very many things. But as we go into what I call the continuation of that discussion rather than a new meeting, I know that you and I see these things through the same lens, with the same values and wanting the same outcome. So it's a real privilege and pleasure to welcome you again.
Last week, 26 nations have pledged to provide post-war security guarantees to Ukraine, which will include an international force on land, sea and in the air. French President Emmanuel Macron said after a summit meeting of Kyiv's allies. The meeting of 35 leaders from the coalition of the willing of mainly European countries was intended to finalize security guarantees and ask US President Donald Trump for the backing that Europeans say is vital to make such guarantees viable. French President Emmanuel Macron named loyalist Sébastien Lecornu, a one-time conservative protege who rallied behind his 2017 presidential run, as Prime Minister on Tuesday, defying expectations he might tack towards the left. The choice of Lecornu, 39, indicates Macron's determination to press on with a minority government that stands firmly behind his pro-business economic reform agenda, under which taxes on business and the wealthy have been cut and the retirement age raised. Macron was forced to appoint a fifth prime minister in less than 2 years after Parliament ousted François Bayrou 9 months into the role over his plans for taming the country's ballooning debt. In handing the job to Lecornu, Macron risks alienating the centre-left Socialist Party and leaves the president and his government depending on Marine Le Pen's far-right national rally for support in parliament. Lecornu's immediate priority will be to forge consensus on a budget for 2026, a task that proved the undoing of Bayrou, who had pushed for aggressive spending cuts to rein in a deficit standing at nearly double the EU ceiling of 3% of GDP. Chinese Premier Li Qiang held talks with Portuguese Prime Minister Luís Montenegro in Beijing on Tuesday, with the two sides pledging to enhance cooperation and work together to safeguard free trade. Li said that since the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and Portugal, the two sides have consistently trusted, respected, and supported each other, advancing a healthy and stable development of bilateral relations. Li said that this year marks the 20th anniversary of the establishment of China-Portugal Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which presents new opportunities for the growth of bilateral relations and cooperation. China is willing to work with Portugal to enhance high-level exchanges, strengthen political mutual trust, deepen and solidify cooperation across various fields, and bring more benefits to the people of both countries. For his part, Montenegro said the Portuguese government is willing to strengthen dialogue and exchanges with China at all levels, deepen cooperation in areas such as trade, agriculture, oceans, culture and sports, and create new highlights in bilateral cooperation in sectors including sci-tech innovation, the digital economy, green energy, and tourism. Iran and the UN nuclear watchdog have agreed to resume cooperation on Tuesday. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, however, warned that any move to reimpose UN sanctions would halt the practical steps set out in the deal. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, has not had access to Iran's key nuclear facilities since the United States and Israel bombed them in June. Iran passed a law after the attacks suspending cooperation with the IAEA and saying any inspections had to be approved by its Supreme National Security Council. The UN nuclear watchdog chief, Rafael Grossi, described the agreement as an important step in the right direction. The Iranian foreign minister said the agreement signed in Cairo on Tuesday fully complies with the law passed by Iran's parliament after the US and Israeli attacks. Araghchi said the agreement establishes a practical mechanism for cooperation that reflects both Iran's exceptional security circumstances and the agency's technical requirements. Members of the global Sumut flotilla reaffirmed during a press conference in Tunis on Tuesday their commitment to sailing toward Gaza, despite reporting that one of their boats had been struck earlier by a drone in Tunisian waters. The flotilla is an international initiative seeking to break Israel's naval blockade and deliver humanitarian aid to war-torn Gaza using civilian boats supported by delegations from 44 countries, including Swedish activist Greta Thunberg and Portuguese left-wing politician Mariana Mortágua. Israel has imposed a naval blockade on the coastal enclave since Hamas took control of Gaza in 2007, saying it aims to stop weapons from reaching the freedom fighter group. Israel's subsequent military assault against Hamas has killed over 64,000 Palestinians, while a global hunger monitor said part of the enclave is suffering from famine. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, who was at the port, said they do not know who carried out the attack, but would not be surprised if it was Israel. Nearly 70 shipping containers slipped off a vessel at the port of Long Beach, California. Port spokesperson said the ship was berthed at Terminal 6 when the containers mysteriously fell overboard into the water. Cargo operations at the terminal were temporarily suspended as crews worked to secure the containers. A smaller clean air barge connected to the Mississippi during the incident was damaged by several fallen containers. Port officials have described the event as an accident but have not provided additional details. The best West Coast seaport in North America handles more than 9 million 20-foot containers per year from 2,000 vessels. Still to come in sports, England moves closer to World Cup auto qualification after Serbia beat down. Stay with us.
Liga Super Malaysia 2025. Pertembungan sengit terus membara. The Cats kali ini mengaum di laman sendiri bagi memburu 3 mata penuh di bumi kenyala. Berdepan gergasi merah dengan reputasi, tradisi dan kuasa yang digeruni. Ahad 21 September, Kuching City FC menentang Selangor FC. 4 petang di saluran OK dan saluran sukan RTM.
Welcome back. England took a huge step towards automatic qualification for the World Cup with captain Harry Kane paving the way for a crushing 5-0 victory over to main Group K rivals Serbia on Tuesday. While Kane netted his record-extending 74th England goal, Noni Madueke, Ezri Konsa and Mark Gay all scored their first senior international goals in an emphatic win. After an uneventful start against the host side, camped in their own half, Kane headed his team in front from Declan Rice's corner in the 33rd minute, and soon after Madueke made it 2-0 after racing onto a clever flick by Morgan Rogers. 7 minutes after the break, it was Konsa's turn to open his England account and put the visitors in cruise control with a close-range finish that was allowed after a VAR check. Serbia's night went from bad to worse when Nikola Milenkovic was sent off in the 73rd minute for a foul on Kane, and from Rice's resulting free kick, Gay arrived to make it 4-0. Substitute Marcus Rashford rounded it off with a late penalty after a foul on Ollie Watkins as England's fans celebrated in an emptying stadium. England have a maximum 15 points from 5 games and could seal automatic qualification as group winners next month.
Massive victory. We put all the effort in.
Tickets for the 2026 World Cup go on sale on Wednesday with less than a year until the tournament kicks off in Mexico City. Tickets will be released in phases, with Wednesday marking the opening of the first draw application window. FIFA said dynamic pricing will be in operation during the first phase, with fans paying different prices according to market demand. Open to qualifying Visa card holders, tickets for group stage matches will start at $60, with pricing for later stages, including the final, reaching up to $6,730. Dynamic pricing is commonly seen in airline ticket prices and hotel room rates during holiday seasons. The World Cup begins on 11th June, with the final taking place in New Jersey on 19 July. 6.5 million fans are expected to attend the tournament, which will be the biggest World Cup in history, with 48 teams and 104 matches across Mexico, Canada, and the United States. The draw for the tournament will take place on 5th December at the Kennedy Center. Nottingham Forest have appointed former Tottenham Hotspur manager Ange Postecoglou as head coach after Nuno Espirito Santo was sacked. The Premier League club also confirmed in the early hours of Tuesday that they had relieved Espirito Santo of his duties. Greece-born former Australia international Postecoglou led Spurs to their first major trophy since 2008, when they beat Manchester United to win the Europa League in May. But after coming 5th in the Premier League in his first season in charge, Tottenham struggled last term with a 17th place finish, the London club's worst league campaign since 1977, when they were relegated, leading to his sacking in June. Postecoglou said last year that he always wins a trophy in the second season in the job, a promise he delivered on when he led Tottenham to the Europa League title. Forest are set to play in a continental competition for the first time in 3 decades, after entering the Europa League following Crystal Palace's demotion to third-tier Conference League in a multi-club ownership case. Postecoglou will likely face a hostile reception back in North London on Saturday for his first game as Forest coach, with his side visiting Tottenham's arch-rivals, Arsenal. In La Liga, Barcelona will kick off their home campaign in front of 6,000 fans at their training ground stadium after Camp Nou renovation delays left the Spanish giants effectively homeless. The club announced on Tuesday that they will face Valencia at the Johan Cruyff Stadium, a modest venue, at their San Joan Despí training facilities on the outskirts of Barcelona. The move to stage their fourth La Liga game this season there comes after the iconic Camp Nou renovation fell 9 months behind schedule, forcing the club to find a temporary solution. The cramped 6,000-seat venue required La Liga to grant Barça a special exemption from competition rules requiring First Division clubs to have a minimum capacity of 15,000 seats. League technicians have spent the past week inspecting the Johan Cruyff Stadium facilities and demanding essential adjustments, including VAR camera installations. Barça had desperately hoped to return to a reduced capacity Camp Nou with 27,000 spectators, but failed to obtain the necessary permits from Barcelona City Council.
Gegak gempita sorakan perjuangan bakal mengiringi perjuangan skuad kebangsaan bagi membawa nama negara ke kejohanan terbesar Asia. Nantikan aksi Harimau Melaya yang akan terus membaham, merobek gawang dengan 6 perlawanan yang bakal menentukan kemaraan. Saksikan ngauman perjuangan ini bersama-sama RTM, penyiar rasmi. Super GT 2025 Series dengan 8 siaran langsung perlumbaan. Pusingan 1, 13 April dibawakan dari Litar Okayama International Circuit. Pusingan 2, 4 Mei dibawakan dari Litar Fuji Speedway. Pusingan 3, 28 Jun dibawakan dari Litar Sepang. Pusingan 4, 3 Ogos. Pusingan 5, 24 Ogos dibawakan dari Litar Fuji Speedway. Pusingan 6, 21 September dibawakan dari Litar Sportsland Sugo. Pusingan 7, 19 Oktober dibawakan dari Litar Autopolis. Dan pusingan 8, 2 November dibawakan dari Litar Mobility Resort Montegi di saluran Sukan RTM. Juga secara penstreaman langsung di RTM Click.
That wraps up World Today this time around. In our top story, world leaders condemn Israeli strike on Qatar. For business news updates, do join us tonight at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 or saluran Berita RTM. Till then, I'm Brenda Lepol, Melissa Madani, Rakyat, Disantuni. Take care.